I'm meteorologist Sarah Mitchell. It is Thursday, October 23rd, 2025. All eyes on Melissa as we continue to track this developing system that has the potential to bring significant impacts across our region this weekend. Right now, we're seeing some organization beginning to take shape, and that is concerning because conditions are becoming more favorable for strength. The situation is evolving over the next several days, moving rapidly, and we need to talk about what this means for everyone in the path of this storm. We're already seeing the outer bands starting to influence weather patterns, and this is just the beginning of what could be a very serious weather event. The window for preparation is narrowing, and that's why we need to have this conversation right now while there's still time to take action. Let me be very clear about what we're dealing with here. Melissa is positioned in an area where environmental conditions are becoming increasingly conducive for development. The water temperatures are exceptionally warm, and the atmospheric pattern is setting up in a way that could allow this system to rapidly strengthen as we head into the weekend. This is not a situation where we can afford to wait and see what happens. The track forecast shows multiple scenarios, and while there's still some uncertainty in the exact path, what we do know is that preparation time is running out. Some areas are going to experience direct impacts, while others may deal with indirect effects that are still quite serious. The key point here is that regardless of the specific track this system takes, we're looking at a weather event that demands respect and preparation. Now let me walk you through what we're seeing in the current setup. The atmospheric pattern is characterized by several competing influences that are making the forecast particularly challenging. We have steering currents that are somewhat weak, which means this system could slow down considerably as it approaches land. When tropical systems slow down, that typically means prolonged impacts for whatever areas end up in the path. The intensity forecast is equally concerning. Sea surface temperatures in the region are running well above average, and there's a deep layer of warm water that extends well below the surface. This is what we call high oceanic heat content, and it's like rocket fuel for tropical systems. When a storm moves over these areas of high heat content, it can undergo what we call rapid intensification. Wind shear values are expected to decrease significantly over the next 48 hours. Right now, the wind shear is providing some limiting factor on development, but computer models are consistently showing that this hostile environment will become much more favorable. When you combine decreasing wind shear with those exceptionally warm water temperatures, you have a recipe for a system that could strengthen very quickly. The timing is particularly troublesome because we're looking at weekend impacts. This means that if preparations need to be made, they need to happen today and tomorrow. Waiting until Friday evening or Saturday morning could be too late, especially if conditions begin to deteriorate earlier than expected. Supply runs, securing outdoor items, and making evacuation decisions all take time, and that time is becoming increasingly limited. Let's talk about the broader meteorological pattern that's influencing this situation. There are several weather systems across the region that are all playing a role in determining where Melissa will track. To the north, we have a series of frontal boundaries that could potentially interact with the storm. The strength and timing of these fronts will be crucial in determining the ultimate path. High-pressure systems are also a major factor in this forecast. There's a ridge of high pressure that's been persistent over the past several days, and changes in the strength and position of this ridge will directly influence the storm track. Computer models are showing some disagreement about how these pressure systems will evolve, which is contributing to the uncertainty in the forecast. What makes this situation even more complex is that we're dealing with a time of year when the atmospheric pattern can be quite variable. The transition from summer to autumn brings changes in jet stream patterns and the overall flow of the atmosphere. These seasonal transitions can make tropical storm forecasting particularly challenging because the steering environment can change rapidly. The current satellite presentation shows a system that's becoming better organized, with convection beginning to wrap around a developing center of circulation. Outflow patterns are improving, which is another sign that conditions are becoming more favorable for strengthening. These are all indicators that we're watching very closely as we assess the potential for rapid development. Ocean conditions beneath the storm are exceptionally favorable. Not only are sea surface temperatures well above normal, but the depth of the warm water layer is remarkable. This means that even if the storm churns up the ocean surface, it's likely to encounter more warm water underneath, which will continue to fuel development rather than limiting it. The moisture environment is also very conducive for tropical development. There's abundant moisture throughout the atmosphere, and dry air intrusions that sometimes limit tropical systems are not a significant factor with this particular setup. This abundant moisture will not only help with storm development, but also contribute to heavy rainfall potential wherever this system eventually tracks. We're continuing to monitor all aspects of this evolving situation, and I want to emphasize that changes in the forecast are still possible. However, the overall trend has been toward a more significant weather event, and that's why we need to be taking this seriously right now, while there's still time to prepare. Looking at the rainfall potential, this is where things become extremely concerning, regardless of which track Melissa ultimately takes. We're talking about a storm system that has the potential to produce catastrophic amounts of rainfall over a multi-day period. The atmospheric setup is conducive for training thunderstorms, where multiple bands of heavy precipitation move over the same areas repeatedly. Storm motion is expected to slow considerably as we move through the weekend, and slow-moving tropical systems are notorious for producing excessive rainfall totals. We could be looking at rainfall amounts that exceed 10 to 15 inches in some locations, with isolated areas potentially seeing even higher totals. This kind of rainfall over a short period creates life-threatening flood conditions that develop very rapidly. The storm surge potential is another critical aspect we need to discuss. Even if Melissa doesn't make a direct landfall in your specific area, the size of this system means that storm surge impacts could extend well beyond the immediate track. Coastal areas need to be prepared for significant water level rises high, especially during tide cycles. What's particularly concerning is the prolonged nature of the impacts we're forecasting. This isn't going to be a quick-moving system that brings impacts for just a few hours. We're looking at a weather event that could produce hazardous conditions for multiple days. That means sustained winds, ongoing storm surge, and continuous heavy rainfall for an extended period. The wind field of this system is expected to expand significantly as it strengthens. Computer models are indicating that tropical storm force winds could extend outward for considerable distances from the center. This means that areas that might not experience the most intense core winds could still deal with damaging wind conditions for many hours. Power outages are going to be a major concern with this system. The combination of strong winds and saturated soils from heavy rainfall creates perfect conditions for widespread tree damage. Trees that might normally withstand strong winds become much more vulnerable when the ground is saturated, leading to more extensive power grid impacts. Emergency management officials across the region are already beginning to coordinate response efforts. Evacuation zones may be activated in certain areas, and it's crucial that residents in these zones take evacuation orders seriously when they're issued. These decisions aren't made lightly, and they're based on the best available information about life-threatening conditions. The timing of high tide cycles will be particularly important for coastal flooding impacts. Storm surge effects are always amplified during high tide, and we need to pay close attention to when these peak surge periods coincide with astronomical high tides. This combination can higher than what produce water levels that are significantly either factor would produce alone. Inland flooding is going to be a major story with this system. Rivers and streams that might normally handle moderate rainfall could quickly become dangerous with the rainfall totals we're forecasting. Flash flooding can develop with little warning, and areas that don't typically flood can become impassable very quickly. The bottom line is this: Melissa represents a serious threat that requires immediate action. We've covered the atmospheric setup, the intensity potential, the rainfall concerns, and the extended duration of impacts. All of these factors point to a significant weather event that could bring life-threatening conditions to multiple areas this weekend. The time for preparation is now, not tomorrow. Stay weather aware, stay safe, and I'll be tracking every development for you.